Florida is the land of the 55 plus communities. There are certain things you really need to know if you're considering moving to a 55 plus community here in Florida. Just because you are 55 and older doesn't mean you really want to move to a community like that. There are certain personalities that these communities, that come across in these communities. And if I were you, I would do my homework. Here are some things that you need to be on top of. Here are some things you need to know if you're considering and want to move in a 55 plus community here in Florida. So I've made a lot of videos recently about avoiding mistakes. The last thing I want to hear with people that work with us is, and that just doesn't happen because we prepare people fairly well, is that I wish I knew before I moved there. I wish I knew this. That is exactly what we try to help to people avoid, because when you're moving to Florida, there is a lot to consider, especially if you're coming from outside areas. Here in the land of Florida, we are the land of HOAs, homeowners associations. There's a cost to it. We'll get more into that, but it's not just that. There are restrictions, and every HOA is not created equal. But when you're looking at 55 plus communities, it's like HOAs on steroids. You should avoid moving to a 55 plus community unless you can handle these things. A lot of our business here in Florida is in new construction. And when that's the case, lots of times when you go to these communities, the HOA is run by the builder. The builder does not turn over the HOA until the community is 90% sold. And in that case, in that point, it is the residents that take over. There are a few things you need to know. During that transition, there are a few things you should expect. Before that transition, remember, it's the builder who's running the HOA. And to a certain extent, they're going to give you all the favorable stuff when it comes to moving their community. Reach out to our team. If you want to know what you're really getting yourself into, we can help you. We know these communities, these specific communities. And if you want to know more about any individual community, reach out to our team. We'd love to help you and guide you as to what you should expect. Well, the first thing you need to be aware of if you're moving into a 55 plus community is you need to be 55. Go figure. So actually, it's not always the case. Let me say, there's a thing called an 80-20 rule. And what that basically says, and that's in all of Florida. We focus here in South Florida. Our territory is Port St. Lucie down to Miami. But we do work, we do business all throughout Florida. We have team members all across actually the country. We focus a lot on Florida. But here in Florida, this video is about HOAs in Florida. Here in Florida, that 80-20 rule is prevalent. And what that means is 80% of the community needs to be 55 plus or older. Why this is important is if you're in a new construction community and as people are coming in, there might be people that are slightly younger than 55. That happens a lot. And every community treats it a little bit differently. As an example, if you're 54 years old and it takes a year to build your home, generally speaking, most communities will allow you to buy that home knowing fully well by the time you close that you will be 55. Not all do, actually, but that is something most do. Again, if you're looking at a specific community, reach out to our team. I'd love to give you our guidance on how they handle it. But there are a couple of communities here that we work with that will, if you're not 55, they are very strict on whether they're going to let you in or not. When it comes to 55 communities, this is one of the things you need to know. You should avoid moving to 55 communities if you can't handle stuff like this. There are lots of age restrictions, and it's not just being 55 plus, it's also the age of your children. So if you, and every community is different again. Some are 18, some are 19, some are 20. They will not allow a child below, let's say 18. They will not allow a child below 18 move into that community as a full-time resident. If they want to be a visitor, they can, but there are restrictions on that. And that's another thing, unless you are aware of it, and unless you can't handle that, you should avoid a 55 plus community. But those are some of the things we'll get into. There are a ton of age restrictions. There is a ton of regulation. So if you're considering a 55 plus community, you need to be aware that there are certain things you need to follow. And if you are not okay with that, you avoid moving to a 55 plus community. So you got to look at it this way. If you're moving into these new communities, sometimes they'll give you a little leeway on the ages. And that also applies to your children. Let's say, hypothetically speaking, the age is 18 and you like, I'm an older adult. I qualify to go into a 55 plus community, right? But I have a younger daughter that I would not for that reason. So you need to be aware of these things. So if you are sometimes have a child that's approaching 18 and that's their age, that's that is the regulation at that community. You got to be careful. You got to get to an understanding with them whether that they will be okay. They'll be okay living there. So it's one of the things. And I'll tell you this: don't think you're going to get away with it. It's like, no, they'll overlook it. That's not going to happen in many cases. There are some, we'll get more and more into that later, but just rest assured, you will not be able, most likely, to bend the rules when it comes to a 55 plus community. 17 years ago, my family and I relocated to this part of the world we call South Florida, and we haven't looked back. Today, we truly find honor to help people, perhaps like you, do the exact same thing. If you're considering moving here to anywhere here in Florida and you want advice from people who've actually done it before, there's a few ways to reach out to us. Down below is our email address. That's one great way. Also on the screen, you see our phone number. That's another great way. But literally two of the best ways is in the description and the comments section. There's a link. Click on that link. What that'll do is that'll set up some time for us to speak either through a phone call or through a Zoom, whatever way you feel most comfortable. In any case, we have your back when it comes to relocating here to sunny South Florida. Here in our area in South Florida, we have a few new construction communities that we sort of focus on because that's where people are. We're focusing on where you're focusing on. Relocation people like new construction. I just found that literally like 90% of the people we speak with that come from other areas, that's their focus. I don't blame them. There are a lot of factors, whether it comes to homeowners insurance, there's a lot of factors when it comes to that. So when you're moving into a 55 plus community, and it is a new community, you have that 80-20 rule to navigate, and they might not let you in if you're on the cusp of that. The other thing is that in general, remember, most of the people that move to this community are new, which is one of the benefits when it comes to 55 and plus communities. You know, if you don't feel like you won't feel alone, let's put it that way, you'll be moving in a community with a lot of people who are new to the area, a lot of people new to that community itself. And that in many ways is what attracts people to the 55 plus lifestyle here in Florida. Okay, back to age restrictions. We know about the 55 plus rule. We know about the children's rule. Here's the other deal. A lot of people that move to 55 communities have grandchildren, of course. So how do they handle that? That's a great question, right? So some communities handle it different than others. Some are extremely strict with it. So you're allowed to have your grandchildren visit. You're allowed all that kind of stuff. The only thing is, once they're there, what can you do? First of all, a lot of places have regulations on how long they can stay. As an example, they might tell you 14 days. If you are it's a summertime, the kids are off from school and you want them to stay for longer, you better check. Unless you can handle that, you should avoid a 55 plus community, but you should check to see what is the regulation. If my grandchildren are coming down for 3 weeks, are they going to give me a hard time? That's something you want to check on when it comes to moving to a 55 plus community here in Florida. All right, staying on the age restriction stuff. So here it is, the summertime in Florida. Your grandkids are down. You're having a grand time. You're happy that they're here. Now, what regulation? And they're here like you're within the 14 days as let's say that's the community. Are they allowed to go to the pool by themselves? They might be, let's say the age is 18. If they're 16 years old, are they not allowed to go to the pool on their own? They need grandma and grandpa to supervise them. You need to look into that. Unless you can handle stuff like that, you should avoid moving to a 55 plus community. Some communities are better at that than others. I think it's absolutely ridiculous if a 16-year-old in the middle of the summer or on like Christmas break or spring break is not allowed to go to this pool on their own. But that's a possibility. And that's something you need to consider if you're considering a 55 plus community in Florida. All right. In Florida, as you've probably heard, we get a lot of snowbirds here. So this is a factor. This also pertains to the age restriction stuff requirement when it comes to Florida. If you are a snowbird, and our snowbirds are typically here somewhere in the area of October to April every year, and you're like going up north and leaving your house alone, can your adult kids even stay there while you're gone? That is something you need to look into. So as an example, it is you're here in the season and it's the summertime and you're not there, you're up north. Can your children stay in your home as a visitor while you're not there for an undetermined amount of time? That's something you need to look into. If you have any questions, let's reach out to our team. We'd love to explain. Every community handles these rules a little bit differently. Having said that, if you are not comfortable with having to learn all this stuff or not comfortable what's involved with a 55 plus community and this regulation, you should perhaps avoid moving to a 55 plus community. Let me go on one of the bright sides. I know I've said a lot of bad stuff already, but here's one of the highlights, one of the pros when it comes to moving to a 55 plus community is it's the lifestyle. The reason why people move to a 55 plus community is the lifestyle. Most of the people there are retired or approaching retirement, and there's just a lot to do there. Most of these communities have what they call social director. They will have a calendar of events. You can live your life every day as if it's 7 Saturdays a week. There's golf. There's pickleball is really popular, yoga, you name it. They have someone that their full-time job is to help keep you happy in terms of activities in a 55 plus community. And then the lifestyle is the number one reason probably why people consider moving to a 55 plus community. All right, staying on the topic of snowbirds. Now I talked a little bit about the age restrictions and whatnot, that they might not allow your adult kids to stay there while you were away. If you're living up north in the summertime, that they're coming down, you got to be careful about that. If that's what you're intending to do, you got to be careful. The other thing about the snowbird aspect of it, and this sort of pertains to a lot of HOA communities, not just 55 plus communities, you want to check on their rental restrictions. In Florida, the land of HOAs, most communities have rental restrictions of some sort, especially 55 plus communities. And so what you want to do is make sure you understand those regulations. I'll tell you why. If your community has a regulation where you're only allowed to have annual rents, or maybe not even rent, there's lots of communities that don't even allow rentals here in the communities. But that's one thing. The next step, the next egregious possibly egregious policy is that they'll restrict you onto with the term you can rent. So if they only allow, like my community does it, if they only allow annual rents, then you're not going to be a snowbird. If you want to live there part-time, great, but don't think you're going to be able to rent your home out while you're not there. So if that's something you're considering as a snowbird and you want to get that rental income while you were gone, you need to know the rental restrictions when it comes to moving to a 55 plus community. We work with a lot of people that are snowbirds. So this is one of the top things you need to look at. The other thing when it comes to rental restrictions, it's not just the period in which you can rent. Sometimes they will not allow you to rent out your home in the first year. In my community, it's the first 2 years. So get familiar. If that's a community that you are checking on, use someone like us. We are a relocation team. We will help you figure out what's what. The builder right now in all these communities, whether it's 55 plus or not, they're running the HOA. You also have to worry about what's going to happen after the community turns over into the residents now as an HOA community. More on that. The guideline that people use are 90%. Once the builders, I should say, once the community is 90% bought and closed and all that, the residents start looking for board members. I'm a board member of my community, right? So lots of times there's always an odd number where it's 3 or 5 members, 7 members. And that's because you vote on a lot of different things. So the HOA is going to be run by the builder. And that might not, those regulations might not stay in place after it's turned over. The board will then pretty much adopt the personality of the community, and you want to be careful. Now, run for a board member. That'll help you get a little bit more of your say, especially if you have time. It is, in many respects, and people will tell you it is a thankless job, and to a certain respect, it is a thankless job. But if you want to have some future direction in your community, I highly encourage you looking into possibly becoming a board member in any of these communities, whether it's 55 or not. The builder does establish the bylaws. So anything that's in the bylaws, once the residents take over, it will need to be overturned by 2/3 votes. There's all kinds of regulations. Your community attorney will tell you, but I just want to keep you aware that there possibly changes when a community turns over from the builder into the residents. That's one of the things. It's not always going to stay that way. It's one of the things you need to be aware of, especially if you're considering moving to a 55 plus community. We produce videos like this every week. If this is your first time to our channel, please consider hitting that subscribe button there in the corner. What that'll do is that'll help notify you each time we put out a new video. We put out new videos every single week. I'm throwing a lot of stuff here at you. I realize that. We did a video on the pros and cons of HOA communities and 55 plus communities. After you watch this, watch those things. We help guide people who are thinking about relocating to this area. One thing I definitely want you to be aware of, yes, there are regulations, and don't think you're going to be, don't worry, these rules might not apply to me. I can figure out a way to get around it. I'm telling you, you won't. And they could possibly, put some kind of fine on you if you don't comply. There are rules as to how much they can fine you. Reach out to our team if you want to know more about what that's about. I work with very closely with one of the largest property management teams here in Florida, so I'm very familiar. We are living in Palm Beach, Florida, very familiar with HOA rules and regulations. If you have questions, we'd love to help you. Remember, in a 55 plus community, the people there are generally speaking older. They're 55 plus, right? So they're I call this, in one of my previous videos, I called it the HOA police. Yeah, there are people that if you think you're going to get away with this, you're not, because what'll happen is there are people that maybe, let's say, they're retired. They don't have as much time they have a lot of time on their hand. And they will, if you think you can get away with having your grandchildren there, if the rule's 14 days and you can have them there the entire summer, think again, because they will report you to the HOA board, to the property manager, and thus the HOA board, and they can potentially fine you when it comes to your activities and what you do. So just be aware that these things are possible. If you can't handle these things, you should avoid moving to a 55 plus community. A couple other aspects that you need to be aware if you're thinking about a 55 plus community. One of the other restrictions are pets. Now, this applies to all age and 55. But just be aware that there are regulations on pets in many communities. Either how many pets, like it could be 2. Sometimes people have 3 dogs or something, and they won't allow it. Be careful of that. There are sometimes pound restrictions. Like they might say, no, as an example, no animals more than 50 pounds. So if you have a above average dog, a German Shepherd or anything that they consider that's more than 50 pounds, don't think you're gonna get away with it. You need to be aware of these rules. They will potentially not let you into the community. You don't want to give up your dog. I know that. But you need to be aware of all that stuff. The other one very, very common pet restriction that we see in Florida is they'll say no aggressive breeds. Now, aggressive breeds is a very vague category. What does that mean? If they're like 10% pit bull, is that a problem? Every community is different. You need to know what that is. Generally speaking, pit bulls, Rottweilers, and all that, if they're if they're registered as that, they will not allow that dog into the community. Again, that's one of the advantages of working with a team like us. We help you navigate things like this. We've seen all kinds of things when it comes to people moving here to our area, and we'll help you know what you should be aware of when it comes to moving into a 55 plus community here in Florida. Listen, I've done this before. 17, as I mentioned before, 17 years, my family and I relocated to this area. I know what it's like to relocate. I'm originally from the New York City area, and the life up there is so much different. If you live anywhere in the country, chances are life in Florida here is so much different. So I know what you're going through. If you're considering moving to this area, why not ask questions of someone who's been there before? All right. This is a big, unless 55 plus item. I sort of saved to the end a little bit, not intentionally, but you need to be aware of this. The cost. What is the cost of a 55 plus community? In general, the cost of a 55 plus community is going to be higher than in an all age HOA community. Here's a perfect example. One of the communities we do a lot of business in, which I think is a great 55 plus community, is Crestwind in Westlake. Westlake today is the fastest growing city in all of Florida. It's right here in Palm Beach County. We love that area in terms of the amount of business going there. And I love it too. I mean, I love the area too. I think that everyone that we've helped move into this area are very happy there. But when all is said and done, that the city of Westlake is going to be 4,500 people. Within Westlake, there is a community called Crestwind, which is 900 people. The HOA for the greater part of Westlake is, depending on the exact sub-community, is anywhere from $100 to $150, depending if you're in Sky Cove or in the Meadows or whatever. But if you're in an all-age community, that is, in general, the HOA fee that you will pay at Westlake. Today, if you live in Crestwind of Westlake, your HOA fee is going to be more. So I want to compare apples to apples. If you live in Crestwind, your HOA fee is going to be about $350 a month. So you can just tell $100 to $350, you're paying more to live in a 55 plus community. And trust me when I say this, Crestwind, one of the things about Crestwind, why people are moving there, one of the big attributes or why people are attracted to it is the HOA is lower than most other places. $350 for an HOA fee for an active adult for a 55 plus community is low for this area. There are some in some of these other areas that are much more money. You have Regency is another one we do a lot of business. Their HOA is a little bit higher. They also have something called a CDD. You need to know what a CDD is. If you're moving into a new construction community, you probably heard CDD as an evil word. You need to learn about really what that's about. Reach out to our team. I'll explain that. So there's extra costs. If you're looking at Valencia Grande, another prominent 55 plus community in the Boynton Delray area, their HOA is higher. So in general, the cost of a 55 plus community is going to be higher than if you're living in an all age community here in Florida. The other thing that sometimes happens is you get a special assessment. That is not something you want. So especially as the community gets older, you'll see special assessments. Special assessments are when you pay your HOA every month, of course, but there are certain instances that come up. They want to upgrade something, or there's a storm, and hypothetically speaking, there's a hurricane, and they have to do some extra landscape to get the community back to what it was. What they'll sometimes do, the HOA board will assess the residents a special assessment fee of whatever per, one-time fee for that month, for that time period. If you live in a condo, these things are very common. If you are thinking about moving into a condo in Florida, you need to reach out to our team because there are some risks when it comes to moving into a condo, whether it's a 55 plus condo or not. Special assessments in some of these condos have been very significant. And one of the main reasons for that is the rising price of homeowners insurance. The special assessments in a lot of these condos are being levied because the insurance situation in Florida, homeowners insurance situation in Florida, has gotten a little bit out of hand, and they can't just they have to figure out a way to pay for the insurance. When you're in a condo, your fees are going towards the homeowners insurance, so they've got to figure out a way to pay for the increased regulation that they're putting on you, and you got to figure out a way to pay for the increased price of homeowners insurance today in Florida. One of the things you need to be aware of if you're considering moving to a 55 plus community is the investment aspect of buying and owning a home in a 55 plus community. Any home you buy, it's an investment, and you need to be conscious as to what that will bring you in a resale. One of the things you need to sort of be aware of, and it's a possibility. Remember, you're only selling this community. You moved in, the HOA's turned over, and life goes on, and you want to sell it, let's say, a few years later. You are selling it to a more limited audience, and that's something you need to be aware of. some of the older, when I say older, I mean older people, but older, the ones that have been around a little bit, they're sometimes when they go for a resale, remember, they need to resell that property to a 55 plus community. So they're limited to who they're selling it to. So you need to do some really good investigative work as to is this a good investment? Are people still looking to buy in this community? Because you are not selling to people that are 55 and younger. The other thing when it comes to 55 plus communities is there is a process. There is a process to get in. So today, I'm back in years of 2020 and 2021, it was ridiculous. Demand was so high because interest rates were so low and people were reevaluating life after COVID and so forth. The demand was really high. They were significant managed auctions, a significantly managed process to get in these communities. Things slowed down a little bit, recently, like about a year or so ago, when interest rates went from literally like 2.75% to 7%, 6.5%, 7%. Things did slow down, but now this year they're moving back up again, and we are seeing a managed process. That's one of the reasons you reach out to us is because we can help you navigate the process. We are seeing communities now today that are going back to a managed lot release. There are certain aspects of these communities where, like, there's a collection in there. They have 3 collections. The middle collection is the most, I'm just giving you an example, is the most desired collection. Well, there's going to be possibly, you can buy the high one, no problem. Come in, buy, whatever. But that middle one that there's a higher demand for, there's a process, and you're going to wait in line, and we're going to auction off. It's one of the things that we're seeing happen again. Let us help you navigate. Living in Palm Beach, this is our business. We are New Home Co-Broker, and we help people navigate this process and teach you what you need to expect when it comes to moving to a 55 plus community here in South Florida. One of the things you might or might not realize is that, we get a lot of people watching this channel that are 55 plus and older and or approaching that age. So we do a lot, thusly, we get a lot of questions. We take a lot of questions from people who are considering moving to these kind of communities. If you're one of those people and you have questions, reach out to our team. We'd love to help you navigate the process here, because let's face it, Florida is very different than whether you live anywhere else in the country. And we can help you figure out if you're going to love or not love so much 55 plus communities here in Florida. People move to 55 plus communities for the lifestyle. Let us help you figure out if the 55 plus community is right for you.